Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's festivities. Welcome to the Taft City Council Successor Agency Joint Regular Meeting for Tuesday, August the 1st, 2017. As a courtesy, all please turn off your cell phones or turn them to silent so that we don't have any embarrassing moments. Any writings or documents provided to the majority of the City Council regarding any item on this agenda are made available for public inspection in the lobby of Taft City Hall, 209 East Kern Street, Taft, California, during normal business hours, courtesy of Senate Bill 343. To begin this evening's meeting, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance read by Randy Miller, followed by the invocation led by Rodney Wyckoff of the West Hills Church of the Nazarene. So if you would all stand, please, and join us.
Please join me as we honor our nation's flag. Hand over your heart and pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessings that you bring to our lives and life itself. We ask your presence this evening as we conduct business. We ask that you would be with our council members as they weigh the decisions concerning our city. They have to make those decisions as they take all the information, process it. We pray that you would give them wisdom and guidance, as we know that they have the best in mind and desire to do the best job they can. We thank you for that, and we thank you for all that are in leadership. And we just pray your blessing on our time this evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, welcome back. Thank you. So wonderful to have you back. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Knorr.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hill. Here. Councilmember Bryant.
Here.
Councilmember Cryer.
Here.
And Councilmember Miller.
Here.
Thank you very much. All right. Item number 1, certificate of commendation for Robert Thompson. I had asked that Mayor Pro Tem Renee Hill go ahead and present this, as she was fortunate enough to serve on the Planning Commission along with Mr. Thompson. So, Mayor Pro Tem Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Taft, the State of California, Certificate of Commendation presented to Robert Thompson in appreciation of his years of service on the Taft Planning Commission. Whereas Robert Thompson began his years of service on the Taft Planning Commission after the City Council appointed him on February 13, 2007. And whereas during his tenure on the Planning Commission, Robert served as Vice Chairman for 4 years and served on the Annexation Committee for over 2 years. And whereas Robert presented over significant city projects, for instance, the update to the zoning ordinance in 2008, the general plan update in 2010, the climate action plan in 2017, and the city's housing element updates in 2009 and 2015. And whereas he also presided over significant private development projects such as the Sandy Creek Estates, the Best Western Inn, the rehabilitation of the State Bank of Taft building to be the new Bank Sports Lounge, and the new Taco Bell restaurants on Kern Street, just to name a few. And whereas in the course of his service on the Commission, Robert was diligent in ensuring all the facts of a project were clear and concise, that the Commission maintained a business-friendly mindset, and served as the Veteran Commissioner from 2013 to 2017. And now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Taft, on behalf of the citizens of the community and all the city employees, hereby recognize Robert Thompson as a dedicated and valued servant of the City of Taft and its citizens, and extends their best wishes for his future endeavors. Dated this first day of August 2017 by the Mayor and all the City Council. Come on up.
Come on up here and let's take a picture.
All right. If I known I was going to get a picture, I'd got my other Hawaiian shirt.
See if we can get everybody in here.
Yeah.
Oops, I just lost it. I just lost it.
Oh, heavens, no.
I know. There we go.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. There's these.
Thank you, Robert. Would you like to step up to the podium and say a few words?
Not really.
Well, that's a very few words.
I'm here for item number 2.
Okay.
But I would like to say and thank everybody for letting me have the opportunity to do this for 10 years. And I really like to get these people to dig into because we couldn't do it without them, especially Mark.
All right, thank you. All right. Okay, next up, item number 2. This evening we have a study session on cannabis regulations. We have a consultant here, Mr. John Zimmerman, who's going to give us that presentation. I have a funny feeling there are quite a few people in the audience this evening that are interested in this because it's a little bit more full than it typically is. So, if you would, please, sir.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, constituents of Taft, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We've been talking to the city and to your town for quite a while now, trying to figure out how Taft would like to participate in the cannabis regulations that the state of California have been implementing. In speaking with your city manager and staff, they're currently working on an ordinance to see how the city would be able to participate and or not participate in certain aspects of cannabis as the regulations come down for state licensing. To say the least, this is a very hot topic amongst many different constituencies across the state. Just give you a little bit of background of what's been happening. In 2015, the governor signed the Medical Cannabis Regulation Safety Act. And then in 2016, the voters voted in Prop 64. As of June of this year, the governor signed Senate Bill 94, which was the document to merge the two bills into one. And the state has created the cannabis division. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the acronym as it's just changed again. So the Bureau of Cannabis Control, BCC, which is under the Department of Consumer Affairs, has been created, and they are going to be issuing their final regulations for state licensing of medical as well as recreational cannabis, and those regulations are going to be coming out in this fall. To this point, the city has looked at creating their own regulations to figure out what and how to either allow or not allow certain aspects of cannabis to operate. There are many questions that you as the City Council have, as well as many of the people that live and work in the city of Taft, and how that will affect them. And I am here tonight to help answer any questions that anybody happens to have as best as I can, and as well can help direct you to the proper information and or documentation to understand better what's going on. So with that, I'd like to open the floor for any questions that the City Council may have.
Okay, well, we'll start over here on my left.
At this point, I'd like to revisit my turn to do that. I'd like to
Oh,
learn
indeed.
a few more
And
things.
then I'll start to my immediate left.
I don't know if I've got a laundry list here that
Josh?
everyone else has, but if you guys will be okay with that, I mean, I wouldn't mind going through all these, and it might take some of the questions
By all
off.
means. I have a funny feeling, everybody, as we discuss this matter, questions are going to stimulate conversations, and they're going to bring up other questions because this is a hot topic, no matter which side of this thing you happen to sit on. So, let's go ahead. And Josh, if you have a list, let's just go ahead.
And also to let you know, I was planning on bringing somebody along with me to help answer any other additional questions about cannabis, the plant, the different processes and things of that nature. Unfortunately, He had an illness in the family and wasn't able to join me. So a lot of these points I'll be able to handle, but if it gets into technicalities of cannabis itself, I might defer on some of it. But I wanted to be able to at least answer the big questions.
I think the scientific dissection of the plant and the chemicals it contains is probably this evening not
Okay.
the most important aspect that we're going to dig into. So thank you very much.
And I don't expect you to have every answer to every question. I wanted to pose these because I had these, and I'm sure, well, I'm hoping that if I've got them, other folks have got the same questions.
Okay.
Well, first of all, give us some ideas of what your background is so everyone knows that you've got some basis to speak from experience.
So very simply, in 2012, I had entered the cannabis industry and had a dispensary in downtown Los Angeles. In 2013, the city of Los Angeles had a vote where we had to comply with an ordinance called the Pre-ICO, which was the Interim Control Ordinance, which was passed back in 2007, and as well a zoning ordinance called Prop D. The location where my dispensary was located was Prop D compliant and met all of the zoning ordinances and regulations, but I was not a pre-ICO entity. An entity in that regard meant that my collective was not formed prior to June of 2007. At that time, I had the option of dealing with the city and the legal ramifications of it, or to exit the industry. I was fortunate enough that somebody who had a pre-ICO entity, who was not Prop D compliant, bought my lease. So that's how I entered into the cannabis industry. From there, I left the dispensary market and went to work for a company called Jane, where we were working on the cash transparency issues and financial services to the cannabis industry. And Jane is a company that's working in Colorado right now with a cash kiosk to basically bring transparency for the banking of the few banks that work in Colorado to service this industry. I left Jane last July 31st, and I joined MGO. MGO is a is a CPA advisory firm. We are a top 100 CPA firm. We have a very large presence in the state and local government. We are the outside audit firm for 8 of the top 10 municipalities in California, as well as CalPERS, the airports, and many of the other state agencies. The firm saw in 2015 with MCRSA being passed and the governor moving to allow medical cannabis regulations take effect within state and local governments, the firm saw a need to find ways to help their government clients understand how best to work within the cities and the industry, how to merge the two. Last summer, they brought me on as their cannabis industry expert to help our state and local governments understand licensing, compliance, which is the most important component of it, and taxation. And that's the capacity I've been serving in for the past year with MGO.
Okay, very good. Now, I might jump around a bit, so I
Please.
apologize. I'm going to try to go in an order that seems logical. From your viewpoint, sustainability has obviously got to be a big concern when it comes to people saying, "Oh my God, there's cash just waiting for us to pick from the tree." Mm-hmm. Of course, but is it something a tree we can continue to go back to, or do you foresee that, or do you see it as kind of a one-off, something that would be there only for a short time?
No, I believe that the industry is like many other hot industries. It's a gold rush, as people say, or the green rush. So from a state and local government perspective, it is most important for you as a city to put ordinances and compliance in place that is going to allow you to have proper controls over an industry that's going to operate in your jurisdiction. And to allow that to happen in the ways that you foresee it being beneficial to your community. That is one side of the equation. From the industry perspective, there is going to be a tremendous amount of people that are going in and doing things and not understanding what they're doing and creating this euphoria around the industry that, oh my God, I've got to get in now, I've got to get in now, because they've got to make a mark and they've got to get their retail or their manufacturing their product. So it's going to be a lot of ups and downs in the industry from the industry side, but it's going to be also a lot of a big learning curve and education process for state and local governments and how best to work with industry. To give you an idea, the industry has historically been in the shadows, and this is now asking them all to come out. I had the the ability of being at a meeting with the Attorney General of California and the company called Weed Maps, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. Weed Maps is an advertising and technology company for the industry. They provide multiple services, but they also, more importantly, are trying to help municipalities understand best how to work with the industry as well. They have a great legislative directive team that is doing community outreach as well. The only two people speaking in that room at that meeting with that breakfast with the Attorney General of California was myself and the legislative director for the company. Meanwhile, there were 7 other dispensary and manufacturing people in the room, and they're listening more than they are engaging because they don't know where things are going. And we're here to help everybody come together and figure out what's best for both.
Okay.
So I know that was a little bit of a side segment of it, but it's just to show you and to talk about the differences that are going on in the industry. More importantly, you were asking, about things going, the euphoria that's happening. There will be that on both sides of the equation. So plan on that.
It's not always going to be as green as it might be tomorrow, a week from now.
It's not, and there's going to be a lot of people that are have ideas that there's riches at the end of the harvest, and it may not be.
Okay. One of the things that really concerns me is kind of like a gold rush. It comes in, everyone dumps their money into it, they get everything they can out of it, and then all of a sudden you end up with a ghost town. Is that something it's hard to predict that, of course.
That's part of the
I
conversation.
don't want that to happen because we end up, it's like the housing boom. You end up with a bunch of houses that you can't sell that people are squatting in or dumps at the end of the day. So that's something that really concerns me.
That goes right back to the conversation we've been having with the city manager and with you in past sessions, is that you need to have a ordinance and a process in place that chooses the right operators should you allow it. And by choosing those right operators, you're basically vetting them from every aspect of application and a permit to operate in your city. You want to make sure that you've looked at them as business operators and make sure that they have compliance in their operation plan, that they have a business plan, that they have the proper capitalization, that they understand what they're doing, and have people like myself and people I work with come out and help vet that they're doing things correctly. And if not, ask that they make sure that they have those items covered or check boxes on your application process to make sure that those things are in place.
One of the things that just came out, I think, on the 28th was the county released their environmental impact report based on what they see as potential for the county when it comes to the cannabis industry. And I think they said well over $30 million annually in property and sales tax. It's a huge number, and it's something that could be beneficial if you're just looking at the dollars coming into the city. But how much of that money could potentially come into the city? In a city our size? I mean, what's your... I'm not asking you to give me an estimate of what we can expect, but what have you seen?
So very simply, if from the conversations we've had in the past and the way that the city council has viewed it in the past, you're pretty much adverse to having dispensaries, which would be retail operations on Main Street. So that's not something that the city of Taft is looking for. So you would not have sales tax where you would get your 1% of that 7.25% from the state. So you would only be looking at potential city taxes that would be imposed on the industry. We had discussed doing a tax ballot measure, which we did not meet the time requirement or for filing such. So the other way that the city would be able to do this would be under a development agreement, whereas you would have a defined tax rate or fee for that business to operate in your city, and you would have greater control over allowing that. So you would be put in control. So if you were talking about a cultivator, it would be a 1, 2, or 3, or 4% gross receipt tax on their sales.
And that would be something, sorry, Renee, that we would impose locally. They would remit
Correct.
locally. We wouldn't have to go through the state.
Correct.
Okay, that helps
Okay.
answer a question I was going to have later. Councilwoman Hill had a question.
Question then. So somebody, let's say we were to allow a medicinal, grow center. Okay, so is that, how do they determine what that profit is? Is it per stem, per square foot? And how do we know what's in there and how do we know what goes out of there?
So very simply, the state is implementing a track and trace system, which means that every plant or every seed that is planted or turned into a plant, a clone in essence, which is a plant about this big, gets a tag on it. That plant gets tagged and it becomes part of a batch. That batch gets entered into and uploaded to the state's track and trace system. And that is reported to the state. At the same time, the operator has to operate their own point of sale system that would have all of the tracking of all of that product that's being grown, manufactured, or sold from their facility. And that reporting would be part of your requirement in your ordinance to make sure that you are being updated and you have access to at the appropriate time.
So if a building has a 25,000 square foot building, how many stems would you estimate?
It depends on how they build out their facility, and it's not going to be a plant coverage because it would become what the net product produced out of it, the gross product produced out of there. So if you're talking about a 25,000 square foot building and you have 700 lights in there and you're putting out 2 pounds per light, that's 1,400 pounds per turn. And I'm just throwing numbers out. I'm not using any real math here. But you would have 1,400 pounds per harvest, and you would then tax on the gross sale of those 1,400 pounds.
What do you estimate that would be, just roughly?
Let's just be ultra conservative and say $1,000 a pound, just so that you could use round numbers.
So and how many harvests per year?
4. And you would actually, and most people that harvest and cultivate, they do a rolling harvest. They're not just, we're going to go plant it all and trim it and cut it down, because there's a lot of labor that's involved. And you basically have 2-week intervals and cycles going.
So what would the taxation be on that amount?
So at 3% of $1.4 million.
Okay, 3%. Okay.
$3,000.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. Like I said, if you guys have questions that come up as we're asking these, ask away. I'm sure I don't got all the questions here. One of the other things I had up, in your experience and from what you can see now, if we were to allow something along that nature, whether it's just commercial growth, what sort of federal issues do we have directly and indirectly for the other parts of the community that we might experience? I mean, do you see, like Taft College, if they might get some sort of federal grant funding, do you see it negatively impacting them, or could it negatively impact them?
The state of California doesn't see or have any impact or concern of that because of all the federal dollars that flow to the university system here in California.
Okay,
and we are the largest state in the union with the largest education budget in the country. So they're not anticipating any issues with their education funding, as well as K through 12 or any of those programs.
Good.
There is a big separation between industry and state and local government. This is George Runner's district for Board of Equalization. Fiona Ma, who's District 1, is probably the largest tax collector in the cannabis industry. She feels that she's probably the largest money launderer, but in essence, she's not, because she's collecting state and local taxes. And once those taxes are deemed, once those dollars are deemed taxes, hands off for the federal government.
Okay, very good.
We have not been able to find anywhere any type of precedents stating anything.
So the next question would be, after we passed Prop 64 last November, and then with SB 94 coming into play, are there any pigeonholes that those dollars, or any dollars generated from any type of cannabis-related industry, would have to go toward, as far as public safety, things like that, or could be used for anything in the general fund?
So the under Prop 64, and if you'd like, I'll pull up a document and I can give you a breakdown of it. But under Prop 64, there is the excise taxes that are charged to the industry. The first $3 million goes back.
Stop you right there on that excise tax.
Yeah.
Would that be paid regardless of whether it's medicinal or commercial?
Correct.
Or not, sorry,
Yes.
medicinal or dispensary, recreational, or?
It's paid on the wholesale and on the cultivation of products. So there's a leaf tax and a 15% excise tax. And the excise tax is paid on the end retail price, but collected at distribution point.
Okay, go ahead. So I'm sorry about that.
So the first $3 million from the cannabis fund goes to the California Highway Patrol. The next $10 million goes to reimburse expenses incurred Then there's another $3 million that goes to the California educational system.
This is a statewide number you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So, and the state of California expects to collect somewhere close to $1 billion in the first full year of cannabis taxes.
So January 1 through December 31.
It's probably going to be
So they're talking about-
into 2019 because they're really not going to be able to start issuing licenses and charging those taxes and having the track and trace. It's going to be a little bit later. But in 2019, I'd say in June of 2019, the state should collect somewhere around $1 billion in excise and leaf taxes.
Now, when you're talking about those taxes, let's say we only do commercial growth, and we impose some type of tax at a local level that they remit to
That's
us.
on top of.
And we wouldn't be required to send that back to the state at all. It's like
No,
you mentioned.
that's-
So we wouldn't have to worry
that's
about any
local.
of that state bureaucracy.
No.
Correct?
Correct.
And that wouldn't be subject to any of the taxes as far as Prop 64 goes, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So you get those tax dollars in addition to
That's
what
what I
the
thought. I just wanna make sure.
cultivators and manufacturers and testing labs, what they have to pay to the state. You also would have another tax that you would be able to impose on top.
Okay.
How does that actually get paid in that you can't put the money in the bank? So you own the business and you're not supposed to put the money into a bank. You can't exactly write the city or the state a check. How does that work?
There's some
Come in with the ball?
there's some systems that are being implemented and spoken about at the state to be able to collect those taxes and those revenues. And for your own, and some of those systems and solutions are being proposed to be also extended to the municipalities. And they are cash collections, and they would be then delivered to the city or to your financial institution. But they would be done in cash.
All cash business.
Yes.
So just to clarify, banks don't make commercial loans on cannabis businesses because it's still a federal Class 1 narcotic. Is that correct?
It is a Schedule 1.
Schedule 1.
Schedule 1.
Schedule
So
1.
if we get the money in cash, let's say that we have it and the city gets their money in cash, can we put it in the bank?
Yes, you can. The state does it right now.
Okay, I just wondered how that worked.
I have a question. When we first met with you and your group, we were discussing, this is coming at us, the state's coming at us with regulations, how are we going to handle it for personal grow, for pot shops, for medical marijuana dispensaries, all that. But the main focus that we were looking at is the commercial grow aspect of the marijuana business. And where we have an industrial park out here where we could have commercial grows because we have the wastewater, we have water, we have available space, we have where it could be, secure and security control. Yeah. So we're looking like that. We if we're going to have marijuana and it's going to be an industry and it's going to generate $1 billion, then why can't we be a part of that? Because we're not having a lot of other industry come along to help us with our tax revenue base. So what you're saying is all these taxes that are in is that if a grower wanted to come in and put a facility in our industrial park or buy some land around here that's in the city limits, that we would be able to negotiate and work out a tax or a fee above what would go to the state, and that's all that income would come to the city.
Yes, you would actually, because you have not passed a tax ordinance, you would actually allow that business to operate under a development agreement, which is
A what? I'm sorry?
A development
A
agreement.
development agreement.
Okay. It's a simple structure that you're allowing that business to operate in your city under these contractual obligations.
So that's what
And part of that
originally.
contractual obligation would be a fee that they would pay to the city for operating.
So that's what originally looked, promising to us, is because we have all the aspects that commercial grow would need, and that commercial grow wouldn't have products coming into the city that would go off.
Correct.
To wherever they go, once it's processed, go off to dispensary somewhere else. And we weren't really talking about, but we need to handle whatever laws come down of whether we can have pot shops or do we allow, does the city have some sort of authority to say yes, no, you can't have it here, you can't have it there, you can do here.
You have all of the right from zoning and from your ordinance
So
to
the state
allow or
can't
not.
tell us
No.
you have to have a pot shop in town.
Now, if you do not have any ordinance in place and you do not do anything, and Mark decides to go tomorrow and open up a shop down the street and start selling January 1 recreation, he can get a state license and open up a business.
So that's the other aspect.
That's
of
your
what
other
we're
aspect
looking
that you got to
into
worry about.
is
You have to have something in place.
getting the ordinances in place.
Yes.
So that we have that control
Yes,
in the city limits of Taft.
yes. Because if
Thank
you
you.
do not have any ordinance in place,
Right.
there's nothing saying that nobody can.
Yeah.
So you have to do something.
Horschel, you have a question?
Yeah, kind of rehash a little bit, because as I understood, there's two reasons why. One, you just hit on this now. Unfortunately, in the state of California, like they always do, it isn't wisdom. I don't think our legislators are very smart to begin with. I think they're on the ignorant side. Do all this stuff, cause up more problems for the cities and the governments. But if we don't act something, if they pass a law, if we don't do anything in Taft, it'd be like a Wild West here, basically.
It could be.
And so the reason why we're here is to put ordinance in here so we have control over it. Even though we don't like it, myself personally like marijuana or drugs or anything like that, we have to deal with the situation that comes up before us. And so unfortunately, we have, in order to have an ordinance and stuff, and at the same time, have where we can get income from it, because we don't do it. It's about half. They're out of town here. They can put a grow there if they want, and we have no control over it. So, to our benefit is to have the ordinance, to have the control, and hopefully have a facility here so that we can control it and get income from it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct. You're right on target.
And we'll get the benefits from the taxes and stuff we impose on that grow. And they cannot sell that. When they make it here, they cannot sell it in this town. Does it have to leave the state, or does it leave when they produce it?
If they produce it and sell it, they could sell it to anywhere that it's legally able to be sold to. They cannot sell it out of state because it has to stay in the state of California.
State of California?
Yes.
Even the medical part of it?
Medical and recreational, yes.
Okay.
And those two are being merged, so medical and recreational will, in essence, from a cultivation manufacturing perspective, will be probably under the same roof.
We can disallow them to sell it in Taft.
Correct.
We can say.
Well, you're not going to have any retail operations in Taft, so nobody's
Right.
going to be able to buy in Taft.
Right.
Just to clarify, currently, with all the medical marijuana, I mean, it's no secret, City of Bakersfield, County of Kern, and all the medical marijuana facilities that are open there, dispensaries, I think you
Yes.
call them, that the vast majority of that is for recreational use. There are places in Bakersfield where at an intersection, a four-way stop. Now, think of any four-way stop in the City of Taft. If we were to put a Starbucks on 3 out of 4 of those places, would that be insane? Would somebody think that's kind of crazy? If we were to put a J.C. Penney's on 3 out of 4 corners, would that be crazy? I think that'd be crazy. Name it. If we put 3 out of 4 McDonald's, would that be crazy? Of course. But you know what? There's places in Bakersfield where 3 out of 4 corners in a 4-way intersection are medical marijuana dispensaries. Okay. All that is not being used for medicinal purposes. The reason they're merging that is they know that. They being the state. There's not going to be a clear line between medical marijuana cannabis and recreational cannabis. There is not. Okay, it's going to be cannabis. That's what it is.
And that's
marijuana.
That's probably a good way of putting what the SB 94 was and the way they merged the two, because they wanted to have one system that they can license. The only difference between medical and recreational, the way the mayor has put it, and I'm going to be perfectly blunt about this, is if you have a medical card from the county or a recommendation from a doctor, you will not have to pay state sales tax. That 7.25% that you pay for buying that bottle of water that he's drinking right now will not have to be charged on that 1 gram of marijuana or cannabis or whatever he buys when he goes into the store.
So everybody's going to go get them a card.
Well,
no, actually, the reality of what's been seen in other states, people don't bother with it. They don't bother.
It's the heck with it.
Pay it.
They just pay it.
Wow.
It's sales tax. Because to go and stand at a county building and to go through making an appointment and getting that, and I don't think you have a county office here, medical office Department of Health. They'd have to drive to that Department of Health office, make an appointment, stand in line, and do it.
So I would
It's like
say
going to the
that
DMV. How many people really want to do
The
that?
vast majority of people who currently have medical cards will quit messing with the medical card aspect of it because they never wanted it for medicinal purposes in the first place. They just wanted to get high, and they will have more readily available assets out there. It's going to be all over the place. Let's talk about another side of the law, okay? Another side of the law, because beyond what we talked about here was taxation and control, we all know that as a city, we have to put ordinances in place. If we do not, then we allow the state to have control over our city, okay? The people who represent the state of California were not elected to see to the best interests of the people of the city of Taft, okay? These people were. So that's what we care about. The state legislature does not care, not one iota.
They created a framework.
Yeah, they don't even have the framework. They don't know how they're going to handle their money. They haven't built their huge state bodies that are going to watch over all this yet. Actually, if you talk to the people, the lawmakers, the state really doesn't know just exactly what's going to happen just yet. They're not prepared, and we all know they're not prepared. So let's talk about another aspect of the legalization of recreational use of marijuana, which is personal cultivation. People will be taking advantage of that. So then square us away, if you will, please, on the personal cultivation aspect of cannabis once it becomes the law. How many plants can a grown-up grow legally?
You, Mayor, are allowed to grow 6 plants at your parcel.
Okay,
of your
at my
home.
parcel, at
Your
my
home.
house.
Yes.
Now, if
Doesn't
it's
that
just
have
my
to be
wife and I,
Doesn't that have to be covered?
It has to be. It may
Indoor?
not be. It could be outdoor, but it may not be seen or accessed by anybody.
so it's behind a fence and you got a shade over it. Okay, so let's say at my house, my wife and I both live there.
6 plants.
6 plants. No matter how many adults live there,
6
each
plants.
household can have 6 plants.
Correct.
Okay, and you said that if you rotate your crop, then you can constantly, if you
Well, no,
only
you're
have
only
6
allowed
plants.
6 plants.
Okay,
It's
that's
just-
fine. So every 2 months, you plant a plant, magic beanstalk.
No. Yes, you're going to
Okay,
have
right.
6
That way
plants.
we're rotating the crops.
Yeah.
Okay, follow me here. Okay, so then over the course of the next 4 months, it matures.
Let me help you a little bit there and go through this a little bit. Number one, if you're growing outdoors, the environment has a tremendous amount to do with it.
Okay.
Okay, so the heat that we're experiencing right now would not probably be the most conducive. And then I'm sure the cold in the middle of winter would not be the most conducive.
Okay,
You
but
need
I
the
can also
proper
grow it.
environment.
I can grow it in my house.
Correct.
With the lights.
Correct.
And the air conditioning.
Yes.
And create the ideal environment.
Perfect, and thank you for saying that, because
Okay.
that even now brings it more to the ordinance and what you need to make sure of.
Okay.
Because in that ordinance, you want to make sure that if anybody does, that they make sure that they have proper electrical and services for their home, not to exceed, so that if there's ever, the biggest thing that you want to do in this whole entire crazy cannabis world right now is make sure that you have controls in place that do not create public safety hazards.
Okay, let's talk about that for a moment. There is nothing in the law that says that anybody who's growing it in their house for personal use has to come to City Hall and tell us that, hey, I'm going to grow 6 plants, and I want you to have the building inspector, come down and inspect my electrical system to make sure I'm not overtaxing it and creating a fire hazard.
I believe we can do
You can. You
Wait, we
can.
can?
Other cities have instituted a permit process.
Okay, so just a second. Now back up here, fellas. So you're telling me that as a part of state law, within the city limits of the city of Taft, we can pass an ordinance that says nobody can grow their own marijuana unless they come here and get a permit and we inspect.
They have to file a permit that they are growing, if they're growing indoors, and you can put it in your ordinance, if they are growing indoors and that they have power usage that exceeds X, that they need to come and get a city permit.
Now, what
now let
kind
me
of
ask you a
compliance
question.
levels do you think we'll get on that ordinance? Are you kidding me?
Who's going to oversee it?
Okay.
Who's your electric company?
Who's our electric company?
Your electric company in town?
You mean PG&E?
PGE. PG, it's some cities have their own local municipal electric. That's why I was asking.
So you get three crops a year. Say 6 plants, 18 plants.
Yeah.
I don't know how big, but what does that a plant equate to? Half a pound or something, maybe.
It depends on what.
How much can you stockpile away?
How many acorns can an
The
law doesn't.
Somebody smoking a whole plant during a 2 or 3 month period of time. I don't know what.
I guess what he's getting to, and I am too. So let's take a look at that. Under ideal conditions, let's just say you pass an ordinance, and that individual comes to City Hall and they pull a permit, and they don't overload their breaker box. And ideally, if they can grow those 6 plants and they rotate their crops, his question is, if I'm an individual and I'm really good at it, how much marijuana can I grow for myself? Because this is personal use. So 6 plants under ideal conditions. How much can I grow, and how much can I cultivate and harvest?
a pound and a half, 2 pounds per crop. So
Okay,
maybe
so 2 pounds per crop.
Figure 6 to 8 pounds per year.
12 pounds of marijuana per year.
No, 6 pounds.
No, 6 plants.
Right.
If I
3 times a year, he's saying. 3 or 4 times. So.
Well, or whatever.
Yeah.
So how many pounds can you have on
Let's say,
campus?
we'll do it easy math. 2 pounds 4 times a year is 8.
Okay.
And this is current state law, already in place. We're not doing anything to affect that.
In January 1, 2018, I can go and grow 6 plants in my
I have a
closet.
question
Well,
on
six
that.
pound,
Okay.
6 plants is
Now,
nothing for electricity.
don't they have to? What about
I think.
filtration?
It
Let's
just-
face it, that stuff stinks.
Okay.
Can the city mandate that you have
You can
filtration
have
on there?
nuisance. You can put in your ordinance a nuisance clause.
Okay, so now somebody doesn't get a permit and they don't have filtration, and somebody has smelled them out, and we call the
And
police, and what happens?
You have a nuisance clause in your ordinance, and you have enforcement rights within your
We
police
can take the
department.
plants away.
Or you can require them to make corrections to the situation.
Just like any other.
So
Just
now-
like anything
now I've
else.
got-
Let's say somebody goes and puts an air conditioning unit on their house to make it, I'm trying to think of something
More
else.
energy efficient.
No, I'm saying to make it the North Pole inside. And they're all of a sudden, this is running and there's a lot of noise. You're going to call somebody because, hey, they went and did this industrial air conditioning unit on their house. You're going to come in and say, hey, you got to change this back, or you got to do something to rectify the situation. Whatever your current code enforcement would be, you would use that same code enforcement for this same instance.
I got 8 pounds of pot in my house during the year. I mean,
You're going to store it. To
Okay,
be
so-
honest, people are going to store it in
But can
airtight, properly humidified elements.
What's going to stop me from selling it?
Nothing. The law.
That's my.
Law that's already in place.
The law that's
It's
already
one
in
thing
place
for
and people
personal
are already
use, but
selling.
now
I
I'm talking about 8
can't,
pounds.
as I've told your police chief, I can't tell you what people are going to do. I can't predict the future. I can't look that far. I don't have a crystal ball. The reality is the majority of people are going to try. I heard from a friend of mine last week that a mutual friend of ours went and bought these 2 grow units that he's going to use, and he thinks he's going to be able to grow the best pot in all of this. Meanwhile, he spent $6,000 buying these pieces of equipment that he doesn't know anything about growing. So people are going to try and do whatever they want. It's a matter of when he gets done with it, what's he going to do with the product, as you ask. Nobody knows.
Is there? Can you tell us? Is there any historical data about an increase in pot sales on the states that border states that legalize recreational use and recreational growing of marijuana?
So in the state of Colorado, there was that issue.
Okay.
But that is the state of Colorado. The state of California is surrounded by Arizona, Nevada, and Oregon, which all have recreational marijuana ordinances.
I guess what I'm getting at is the people there also could only grow it to smoke it. They couldn't grow it to sell it, but they grew it to take across the borders and sell it where those people couldn't legally grow it.
We have it coming up from Southern California. Of
course we do.
From
We have it
Mexico,
coming from
on
Mexico.
boats and every way that it
Exactly
goes.
right.
So we can't stop that. But the one thing that a legalized market will do is if it's done properly, which is the key word there, the state of California has to do this properly, and the cities also too. There are many cities that are imposing these insane taxes that are going to just keep driving the black market. The less likely it is for a black market to exist is when you have a regulated system in place that doesn't support the black market.
Well, that's an interesting concept.
Capitalism at its finest.
Well, yeah, that's all well and good, and that's great. But if it weren't for the simple fact that we pass laws not to control the behavior of people who obey the laws, but we pass them because of people who disobey laws. And people who categorically disobey laws are not going to change their behavior based on additional laws.
But the reality is that if you could do something and do it in a way that you're doing it legally and earn the same amount of money, if not more, in a regulated market, wouldn't you do that versus taking a greater risk of being in trouble with the law?
Well, you're asking me. I obey the laws. That's higher
the
legally.
the reality of what this market should do, and keyword there is should, is that the more regulation that comes in and people that work in the regulated market, and in the state of California with track and trace, that's going to be the key element of creating less of a demand in the black market.
Okay, understood. Now, another reality, of course, of the market, because we talked about this on the business side of things, is that it's a cash business. Lots and lots of cash.
Yes.
Okay? People who are going to break laws like don't commit armed robbery and don't commit burglary and don't shoot people to steal money, they're going to know that with an increase in this, there's going to be an increase in available cash and available opportunities to rob people and steal cash. Because there's going to be, just as surely as, like you say, there will be a lot more cannabis out there, there's going to be a lot more cash out there, anything that has to do with cannabis trade. Right?
In some regards, yes.
Okay, that's what
I have a couple more questions if I don't get interrupted here, but a lot of people don't understand that the recreational marijuana, if you're working and you smoke it, recreational or whatever, and you go to work and it's in your system, they could lose their job, and a lot of the time they create more poverty, more homeless, more other issues in the community because people just live on it. I look at it as a gateway drug. I believe, my personal belief is it starts right there, and it's just sad that I like to let people know that if you smoke it and think you can get away with it, it's going to catch up with you. Somewhere along the line, I see it's going to catch up. I see a lot of zombies. I call them zombies out there. All they drive slow. Everything's in slow motion, and they don't get. They think they're normal. And they equate to alcohol. Well, alcohol leaves your system in 24 hours. Where marijuana stays in your system 5 days or more in your system.
The effects of marijuana do not impede you for greater than 24 hours. They're out of your system from a
intoxication point.
Intoxication point inside it. The same, very similar to alcohol. And there's some documentation that I can provide you with. That's some studies that have been done. The myth, in fact, of it being a gateway drug and all of that. There is a lot of controversy around that, and these are things that are going to continue to be discussed. The reality is that the state of California is going to have an issue.
We've had an awful lot of accidents here on 119. And some it wasn't by alcohol, it was by drugs. And they had an article in the Bakersfield, California about that, and other roads and stuff where people were driving slow and light would change and be green. They pass a few times before they were like the color gun. But there's a lot of rear end accidents. They were going through stop signs, but it was all going back to drug. It's going to be where more accidents are going to be by marijuana or other drugs or associated with it that can draw to it than there is by alcohol. It's going to surpass it.
Actually, one of the largest causes for accidents of that nature have been opioids. And marijuana is actually a transition now, and this is a big argument at the Department of Veterans Affairs of taking people off of opioids, morphine, things of that nature, and switching them to cannabis, because cannabis does not impede you as much as an opioid does. And a lot of those discussions that you're talking about, and yes, there is cannabis involved in many of them, but the reality is that there's a lot of misnomers because people are taking multiple things. They're smoking or ingesting cannabis, and they're taking pills, or they're taking something else. So there's a lot of things that we are going to be further educated on as these studies go on. UC Davis, I believe, is also going to start a study next year specifically to that point.
Yeah, you mentioned, that the cannabis, different levels and stuff, but alcohol the same way. If you get 0.08 or higher, you're drunk driving. If you get less than 0.8 and have an accident or get pulled over, you're driving under the influence.
Correct.
So so that could.
In Colorado, they actually had a huge issue with this in 2016. The reason being, in 2015, they finally figured out how to identify somebody who was impaired. And the reality of impaired versus driving under the influence was a lot lower, I believe. And I'm going from memory from the study that I read. But it's a very skewed report because they only have such minimal amount of data. The state of California will start to track that in 2018, and they may be tracking it now. But it's not anything that's been released as a public report stating how much of driving under the influence from cannabis, let alone what detection methodologies that the highway patrol or local police are going to be able to be used. And I don't know, I can ask the police chief if he's been brought up to speed on any of those items with regard to driving under the influence or driving impaired.
This discussion could go on for a very, very long time. And
I'm not the expert to have that conversation.
Understood. There are some undeniable realities, and that is, and as a matter of fact, I'll just fill everybody in here. We had a discussion about this with Vince Fong, our legislator, Assemblyman Vince Fong, and he came and sat down with us to discuss this. When the legislature discussed this on the floor, there was a contingent that came from Colorado, and there's a contingent that came from the state of Washington. They said there are a couple of things that you need to know right now. If you as a state end up approving this, you're going to see a couple of spikes. You're going to see a spike in the number of marijuana-related traffic accidents and fatalities. The other spike you're going to see is a spike in homelessness and indigence. And that is happening in Colorado as well. So whether we agree with the concept, the unfortunate reality is that it was passed in the state of California. So I want to refocus our discussion here, and that is ordinances regarding what we can do within the city of Taft. Now, you spiked my interest, and I'm going to ask for clarification here. You said we can have ordinances that require, if people are going to cultivate in the city of Taft indoors, that they have to get a permit and they have to provide.
They have to notify the city that they have an indoor cultivation and that you can ask for the right to validate and verify that it is within city code for electrical.
Okay, certain criteria.
Yes.
Okay, now then, just to clarify, what if they don't want to do it indoors? They just want to grow it outside in a fenced-in area underneath the shade. Okay, now it's not indoors. It's just a matter of...
They can have a greenhouse in their backyard. You wouldn't know it as it is.
Okay, and we cannot have ordinances regarding that. The state put that law in effect, which is 6 plants.
Correct.
Okay, that's it.
Yes.
All right, that's the clarification.
Well, I have a question. We engaged your firm to help us with building ordinances and regulations and fees and all that kind of stuff. And where are we at in that process? And when might we have some recommendation from you and staff that would come forward to the council?
Well, let's thank the great state of California for throwing out the MCRSA and the Prop 64 and creating SB 94, because we were currently drafting a draft ordinance for the city of Taft, and your planning director and your city attorney and I have been working on it, and SB 94 changed that. And the next iteration I will be handing off to your city attorney and planning department will be within the next 2 weeks. We're currently having...
So most of the discussion that we had tonight, you've already integrating these into
Yes.
those, or is this all new stuff?
This is all stuff that's being integrated
Yeah,
into
okay.
a draft ordinance package that legal counsel will be working through.
Just quickly, if you will, because we've had this discussion, and this is for everybody's benefit. Beyond having the medical/recreational dispensaries, in other words, brick and mortar storefront, buy your dope on Center Street. Just kind of lay out some of the other aspects of the cannabis industry. We've talked about commercial growing. Like I say, there's a big fog, I will tell you people, between medicinal marijuana and recreational marijuana. That line disappeared.
Under SB 94, it's just
gone.
going to be one.
Okay, so that's gone. So
It's,
you can forget
at the
about
at the point of sale, it's going to be
Yeah.
delineated between recreational and medicinal for tax
It
purposes.
is what it is. And beyond that, there will be transportation centers. I know that you spoke of this. So
And that was pulled out of the current legislation as well.
Okay, so that is gone as well.
The only things that the city of Taft may want to look at and should look at, and I'll be blunt again with this, and I know it may be in contradiction to your thoughts and beliefs.
No,
but I
lay it
believe-
out there. That's why we're paying.
I believe that if you would like to, the most opportune, because of your city, where you're located, the real estate that you have available would be for potentially cultivation on some sort of scale, manufacturing, which could be just the extraction and/or preparation of products using cannabis oil and/or baking or making.
So you're talking about edibles. You're talking
Edibles,
about
things like
Dolly Marijuanason instead of Dolly Madison.
Pardon me.
Never mind. It's just. In other words, you're
I've
talking
got a lot
about-
of puns. I didn't hear that
You're
one.
talking about edibles. So when you're saying extraction, and you're talking about edibles, you're talking
Well, you could
about
have a-
brownies, and you're talking
You
about.
could have a grow next door and manufacturing next to
But
that.
just to clarify what he's saying.
Yes,
Grow the
you're
product
talking about
and then-
different. Yeah, you're talking about vape cartridges because the reality of where the cannabis market's going today, flower is less than 50% of the marketplace. Actually, smoking marijuana flower is becoming less than 50% of the marketplace. Majority of the market is edibles and/or extracted products, and they're actually probably, for a conversation that we can have. Let's use the term microdose. They're better dosing because people don't sit there and continue on a joint and get themselves too intoxicated. Whereas if you're using an edible or something, you're using a controlled dose if you are able to control yourself.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right.
And that's a whole conversation.
So
that we
we're
can have.
making getting high cleaner. So you won't
Not
get
only
secondhand
that, you're
smoke
actually-
anymore unless you pick up the crumbs of the brownies. Or
Have you ever had back problems?
Amen.
back
Problems, back pains?
Oh yeah, my
Okay.
back hurts all the time. I'm old.
Many people use a certain strain of cannabis to help pains like that, arthritis, things of that nature. And
I use Tylenol. Some people use marijuana.
exactly. So Tylenol doesn't always work.
Okay. Okay, I
Now,
understand.
One more question, or maybe one more, but the law is right now on medical marijuana at this moment. And
Pardon me, I'm sorry, I
recreation.
can't hear you too
I
well.
mean, medical marijuana, you have to smoke it in your home. You can't smoke it in public. Or
Correct. You cannot ingest or smoke or do anything in public.
And that will go along with recreation. They have to smoke it inside the home too.
Correct.
They can't go out in the park and have a little party and.
Correct.
But just so we're clear on that, once the extracted and the edibles come into play, whether you're eating a brownie or they have hard candy, they have sarsaparilla, all
They have
these
drinks.
products.
They have drinks. They have.
Those
and
will make their way
they have
into
foods.
every aspect of life and every place on the street. They will find their place. As a matter of fact, it's very well known. And you think about how are we going to keep this product away from the hands of the youth? And I looked into that. And one of the answers of the state was, well, we've got several different ways to do it. One of the ways we're going to do is we're going to put a warning label on the side of the box, much like we do on cigarette boxes, which obviously that's had outstanding success, for heaven's sakes. All those kids who want to smoke, they read that and then they walk straight away from it. But when you package things like brownies or cookies or candy or sarsaparilla, then younger people are attracted to those things as opposed to rolling a joint. And so you have a larger control issue because they're going to be more prevalent in everyday society and more homes, and that is a reality. That is a stark reality that cannot be ignored.
Correct.
Do you have any information, because I have heard a few things, about the demographics of who is using the most cannabis?
It actually is being formulated, I would say, is probably the best word, because there are so many different studies going on about that. But I will tell you, it is shocking to see how many people of all of our ages are utilizing it.
I believe it was the Today Show a few months ago, and they were talking about, it was like something like 12% of the cannabis use was in that 13 and under age group. Thank God. It's a small amount, really.
There was also a study that said that the
baby boomers were the ones that were using the most. They said like 80% of all marijuana use was from baby boomers.
Yes.
And some was recreational,
and
some was...
Generation Y or X.
Yeah, I just thought that was interesting that we always assume it's younger people, but that's not
and
their
high
drug
school
of choice right now.
And marijuana use of high school students has actually gone down by 20-odd%.
That's what they were saying. I thought that was
so. It
interesting.
actually has decreased because it's not as taboo anymore. Still smoking a cigarette's cooler for a kid at high school than going and smoking a joint.
It's an interesting concept. So some of the things that we have established here in regarding the building of the ordinances, so everybody knows, first off, we have to do it. Everybody knows we've got to do it because of what the state did. The voters approved this, and then the state is changing things. If we do not enact our own set of ordinances regarding the industry within the city limits, then you defer to the state, and the state will do whatever they want. You lose control. So we have to do that. Okay, and so now we know why. The other aspect of this thing that we have to consider is what ordinances are available. What can we legally do to try to control some of this, which you talked about? Private growth indoors, you can. Private growth outdoors, not so much. Okay, we pretty much can't do anything about that. After it becomes law, it becomes law. Anybody who wants to erect a small fence in a shaded area within the confines of their own backyard can grow 6 plants.
The reality is that's probably happening in your town today.
I don't doubt that.
Okay.
It's just going to be
And
easier.
if I grab my phone, I'll bet you I could open it up and show you that I could get it delivered here in a half hour.
Which
So
just
it's
goes to
happening.
show you that laws are made for law-abiding people, and lawbreakers will always break laws, whether it's after the laws are enacted or before the laws are enacted.
But the reality is that if you enact laws and the way that this market's going to go over the next year or two, you're going to see a lot of people coming.
Well, the other thing is that City of Taft is a small part of this community. We have 3 other unincorporated areas that are attached to City of Taft and come under the same zip code and the Taft banner.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see what the county does, because if, say, we enact an ordinance to prohibit marijuana dispensaries, you can just go a block over the city boundary line and go to a pot shop in Ford City or
Mr.
South
Miller, I
Taft
spoke to
or Taft
Lorelei.
Tide. So we have no control or no say about any of that. So we're going to see what the county's going
I
to do.
spoke to Lorelei, I think it's Abiel, is that how you say her name?
With the
and
county.
I asked her, I said, so we in the confines of the city of Taft say no dispensaries. How do we avoid having one, down the street?
You can't.
Well,
It's up to the county.
it has to be a half a mile away from the city line, she said. So that takes away a lot of the area right close to the city. However, I said, well, what about Dustin Acres, Valley Acres? And she said, they can.
That's up to the county.
It's up to
That
the
is
county.
county. It's up to county. By the same token, I want to remind everybody that the county still allowed the sale of spice and bath salts when the city decided to no longer allow that poison to be sold within our city limits. So just because the county or any other county or any other state decides they want to do it does not mean that we don't make a decision that is in the best interest of the people that live within these city limits. The people that live in the city can travel outside the city. We know that. And people from outside the city can travel into the city. We cannot control that. What we can control are the ordinances that we approve and what portion of this industry we allow to take place within our city limits. That's what we can
Now,
control.
can't we get with the county, with our sphere of influence, covers all this area here, to get a joint powers agreement.
You shouldn't use that word. That was a play on words that doesn't belong in this discussion.
And the county has to do.
Joint powers.
I'll go back to my.
You actually got a pun out of them.
All right, but no.
I'll go back to my question, how far along are we on the process of getting some ordinance in place?
So I would say in your September or October meeting, you will have an ordinance that will be first reading, if I'm not mistaken, Jason? If we have it in August, you'll have a first reading.
We have to wait 30 days after that first reading to do second reading implementation, right?
Yeah.
But the timeline is shrinking.
By
Because
yes.
The deadline is not going to move backwards.
You need to have something done by 12/31, because January 2nd, the state is going to open their window to start taking applications.
Whether or not anybody else in the state is ready, and whether or not they change the target. Like he said, they were very close. We were very close to having draft ordinances to consider. And then the state made changes, and all of a sudden...
Now they're working under emergency ordinance rules.
Okay.
So they're going to actually be coming out with their first draft, go to a 45-day comment period, and then go right to emergency ordinance.
And all they're worried about is their timeline. They are not worried about our timeline.
If we get an ordinance in place, and could we change it after the deal, or are we stuck?
Same way that you can do every other ordinance in the city of Taft. You can go back and amend it.
It's in the past, and
You can amend anything you want in the city
Isn't there only
ordinances
going
of
to be
Taft.
40 permits
In the county.
in the whole county?
For
Is it for dispensaries or for growing?
That was in the draft
For
DIR.
dispensing, if I'm not mistaken, and that's the county of Kern.
Okay, what about growing?
Unlimited.
Oh, it is, okay.
So, just to give you an idea, and this is because I do live in LA and the way that the Los Angeles City Council is handling things, the main focus is on dispensaries and where they're allowed. All of the other marijuana or cannabis-related businesses, the ordinances are using and relegating them to commercial, light industrial, or heavy industrial areas. So,
Which is a zoning issue, and it goes through the planning.
and that's the way the majority of ordinances across the state are being written.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just actually.
By all
finish
means,
this
that's
off.
what he's here. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Zimmerman, would you say that you were an advocate or on the pro side as far as the cannabis industry goes? Just to be fair.
To
Yes,
be fair,
both answers.
I'm an advocate of capitalism and of open markets. I'll be perfectly honest. Otherwise, if I was working in this industry, I'd be working for the wrong firm, because I then should be a activist, which I'm not.
No judgment. I'm just
No,
very
no
clear.
judgment.
So what I wanted to do is then ask you, if you were to give me one or two prime detractions or negatives that such an industry would bring to Taft, I'm going to give you the opportunity to rebut this as well, so I'm not just asking you a loaded question. Give me one negative that we would have to look forward to as we implement and allow or don't allow certain types of cannabis-related businesses.
The one negative would be, to be honest with you, choosing the wrong operators and the wrong people to bring into the city of Taft. That would be your biggest negative, because in doing anything in the cannabis industry, should you allow it to happen in your town, which is probably going to be the biggest question for the city of Taft, is making sure that you choose the right operators to work with and the right people to work within your municipality.
Okay.
That's the one negative that you should watch out for.
The other one I see is, and I kind of worry about, is that if we don't get this right, and we don't have the ordinances in place correctly,
You still
we're
have
going to get sued. So,
No,
when
you
we're out
have-
there hanging out on our own, if we do.
your ordinance will state that you have to have a permit from the city of Taft in order to operate in the city limits of Taft. If you do not issue a permit, they do not have the right to operate in the city of Taft. And then your code enforcement and your law enforcement has the right to shut down anybody who may be operating without that permit. So your ordinance, getting it right, means that you have the ability of issuing a permit for any business to operate in this
we
space.
don't want to violate anybody's rights.
They have to have a permit in order to operate. That's the one thing that you're putting in there. Correct, Jason?
Correct.
That's a part of it, yes.
Yes.
To finish that off then, would you say the fiscal impact is probably the biggest positive?
Yes.
Okay.
The fiscal impact and also the backside of the state funds. The state is going to be issuing grants to the municipalities that participate and allow operations in their jurisdictions.
regardless of the type, as far as commercial or.
You need two different license types in your municipality.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the ability, you have to be able to offer those two. You don't have to have them always operating, but they have to be offered.
Okay, I would like to get, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, the state, you have to, will give you grants and stuff, that means you got control then too. Is there fingers in the pot a little bit?
No, the state is charging the excise tax and the leaf tax. The $1 billion that they're collecting, those dollars are going back to, those tax dollars are going back to different programs so that that will be grants to different departments across the state.
So how they
I can
who
share
would
with you.
you-
I could share with you the breakdown of those funds and the way that they're going to be.
so the state, well, say the city monitors it and
Now,
collects it.
the city will be able to apply for grants from these funds. It's just grant funds, and if you actually have a cannabis business operating in your city, you will be able to apply for that grant. So it could be for law enforcement, it could be for education, it could be for, and the largest portion of the excise tax and the state taxes goes to drug education.
All that money's going to stay over on the other side, on the coast side. It's not going to come over here.
One of the other known issues that we've had, now this is on the medical marijuana side. It's interesting that people, when we say medical marijuana, it's like it cleanses everything. It's all of a sudden, no, it's medical marijuana. It's not marijuana. Well, we have established, thank you very much, that it's two and the same. It will be treated.
I'm not going to lie to you.
Okay, it is two and the same. It's marijuana, folks. Okay, and the city of Bakersfield has shown, and they can produce the documentation to prove that with the introduction of those dispensaries, especially multiple dispensaries, there's an increase in crime, there's the degradation of the neighborhood, and those are very real aspects of this industry. Along with that, because we talk about, well, we've got the income side. Well, the cost on the law enforcement side is very real. You as a taxpayer, trust me, you pay for the police department, whether it's the policemen or the policewoman or their uniforms or their automobiles. Okay, so if more and more of their limited time, think about it, we live in a time and period when AB 109 has been passed, Prop 47, 57 is going to come into effect, 11,000 plus felons are going to be released from state prisons up and down the state of California. Crimes against property are on the rise, and it's a constant battle. And it's not because law enforcement is not working very, very hard to stop it. The state government shackles law enforcement and police officers more often than they shackle criminals in this day. And there will be some of that come along with legalization and the increased use and the increased availability of marijuana. That is undeniable.
I will say that the city of Bakersfield, the way I understand it, does not enforce because they do not have a proper ordinance in order to enforce the current dispensaries and shut them down. So law enforcement, as you said, is shackled because the city of Bakersfield has not implemented a proper ordinance.
Okay, well, the city of Bakersfield didn't pass AB 109 or Prop 47 or Prop 57. Those things are law enforcement issues above and beyond. But
Right,
regarding
but we're
the
talking
ordinance
about a
issue-
local municipality not creating a proper ordinance for dispensaries in their local jurisdiction. Come January 1st, it's for them to deal with and make sure that they have, because they have the need.
Okay, and you have earlier, we talked about this, you have earlier recommended that the city of Taft could develop ordinances requiring permits and inspections that go with private growth indoors, and if we caught anybody growing indoors without the permits, then it's code enforcement issue and law enforcement issue. All this is more time and more money spent on code enforcement and law enforcement. It is.
Correct.
All right, thank you. So that is a negative financial aspect of this whole thing. That's on the other side.
Correct. But you could also, in part of your ordinance, have fines in there to cover some of those expenses if somebody is caught doing so, and to cover and recoup your expenses, just as we have discussed about the industry being able to cover and reimburse the city for any costs associated with monitoring and/or allowing it to operate in the jurisdiction.
All right. Well, like I say, this particular issue, there's a lot of people, and everybody's still here. So guess what? I'm glad you're all that interested in this issue. No matter which side of this issue you happen to be on, I'm glad everybody's interested. It's your government, it's your city. You need to be interested. You need to be involved. Beyond that, this particular discussion could go on into the wee hours of the evening. So I would ask that we kind of wrap this up so we can continue the people's business. But as far as critical points, I would ask each of the members of the city council if pretty much asked those questions and we have gotten the responses from the professionals. Are we to that point? Councilman Miller?
I'm fine right now.
Okay. All right.
I'm fine. I can't wait to see the ordinance as it comes out.
I have a question. I was noticing in the county thing where they had a yes and a no ordinances going on. One of the things was they estimated $2 million in costs for law enforcement to, to prevent this. What would we estimate we would have that happening in a city like Taft? Because it's not a very big city, but
It's part of why we were discussing the tax, because the tax is the fee income that would come from the industry. You would also have some cost recovery for the administration. So whatever fees you would have.
well, what if it's we all vote no? Let's say we vote no and there's nothing we allow in Taft.
It's going to be part of your your city budget in order to
Mitigate.
But if it's the
cover
other
it.
way around, if we have certain things that we do allow, there are grants.
You're going to have more revenue coming in to make sure that your city is properly situated for any additional impacts that it has to its city budget. I would not suggest using these dollars for anything but, rainy day fund, additional items or services that are necessary to the city. Don't go...
Exactly for the sustainability reason.
Exactly. Don't go taking out long-term bond debt on the anticipated revenue from cannabis.
That's not our style.
Very good. Okay, just
Like your
let
family
everybody
budget.
out there...
Don't overspend.
Let everybody out there in TV land know that Mark Staples and the city manager are both going to be at the Sit and Sip tomorrow at 9 a.m., right? Where this conversation can continue, or if there are additional questions that have come up in the minds of those that are in the audience, that would be a great place to continue.
John, will you be there tomorrow too? Or no?
By phone. If you want me, I'll come.
I
I
didn't
can
know
do
if you were
by
going to be
phone.
there or not. That's fine.
Okay. And then along with that, because we want to get input from the people of the city of Taft, this will have effects on everybody in the city of Taft. Next Tuesday at 6 p.m. at the West Side Rec, Mark Staples will also be there, along with several other people, to discuss this very same issue. So we don't make suppositions like, well, this is the one night we're going to talk about it, and the one night we're going to hear input from the people of City of Taft. It was talked about at the last Sit and Sip, if I recall correctly. It'll be talked about at the next one. And then beyond that, we're going to have another outreach so that we can please get more people informed, more questions, more people's concerns. It's your city, it's your government. So those are the times. Sit and Sip tomorrow, 9 a.m. Next Tuesday, 6 p.m. at the West Side Rec. All right? Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody.
Also, we can take any written, someone wants to write a letter, just please
Yeah,
include
anytime.
your name and your address in the letter.
If anybody out there can't make any of those, and you still have a question or a concern, you can simply write it down, write your name on there, bring it by City Hall, and we will consider that as well.
Emails as well.
Emails as well.
All right? Like us on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter. Isn't that what everybody's saying?
There we go. Getting hip. I like it.
All right. I want to thank everybody, and thank you very much, John, for your time.
My pleasure. And if anybody needs any specific information, please provide me with an email and what documentation you guys require or need. Constituents as well. I'm more than happy to provide you with any additional documentation or information that I can.
Okay, very good. Thanks again.
I don't know if Mark had anything to add. Maybe.
Yeah, I think Mark Staples, you going to jump on up here and talk to us briefly?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Knorr. Mark Staples, Planning Director for the City of Taft. I know we're focusing on the city, but since it's been brought up about the county, I just wanted to notify everybody the county is having an additional public meeting regarding the EIR that they're drafting 3 weeks from today on August 22nd at 2 in the afternoon. So any questions about how they're going to regulate their ordinance and how it affects Fort City, South Taft, and Taft Heights, that would be a meeting to attend or contact the contacts on their webpage regarding their ordinance.
All right, very good, because after all, we're kind of surrounded by the county, aren't we?
Sharing a border.
All right, they're part of the west side, so it's kind of a joint venture. There you go, you made me say that.
And as far as the schedule, just to give you somewhat of a hopefully detailed step is hopefully we'll be at Planning Commission at the meeting in September, which means the first reading to City Council would be in October. Second reading early November, 30 days puts you into December, and we're ready for January 1st.
Pretty close timeline, isn't it?
Yes.
And that time is shrinking. Time is of the essence.
Key thing is getting the land use stuff in place that we're working on with John, and if that's in place, we should be ready to go.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, Mark.
Welcome.
Okay. Well, that was a lively discussion. Next up, item number 3, citizens request public comments. This is the time and place for the general public to address the City Council on matters within its jurisdiction. State law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. Council may receive comment and set the matter for a subsequent meeting. Please limit comments to 5 minutes. I do believe we have a couple people signed up this evening. Lodima Hatch, but did you still want to talk concerning the cannabis? Yes. Okay, so first Lodima, and then we're going to have Dr. Oren, Kathy Oren from the Chamber.
I'll keep it brief. Lodima Hatch, 209 East Warren, Taft, California. Gentlemen and lady, thank you for your time. Obviously, you've spent a fair amount more. I am John Lee come lately to this discussion tonight, and obviously you've spent a fair amount of time. I only just today was reading on Facebook Denver's issue of upward levels of crime, both with accidents and the impact of marijuana, horrible levels. Also read that Kalinga, who was using some of the advanced monies to develop something, and I'll have to go back and do more research to be thorough, is in trouble now with their investment of projected development. The city of Bakersfield is obviously seeing differences on crime levels and understaffed, and I know we are also understaffed. My concern to staff and to the council is, have we looked down the road at how many other places really are having major issues, and are we prepared to deal with those major issues? Staffing to handle what's going to come. I, for one, do not believe for 1 second that the government of California, who says that we will get back $3 million for the highway, $10 million for expenses, and $3 million for education statewide, they haven't managed money appropriately yet. Look at the newest gas crisis, which was supposed to go and help the roads, but it's being diverted for Lord knows what all. Fact. My question on taking marijuana as an individual who works at an organization that does random drug testing. Now, granted, I just heard that supposedly marijuana doesn't last more than 3 days. I've heard that, yes, it does. It goes upwards of a month. So if you eat a candy, something, and go out and drive a bus, and you're tested, does it show, and is your job at stake? People need to know this if you're going to imbibe in what's now going to be considered easy access, fun stuff. And you guys have no choice. You need to create an ordinance that protects us the best you can. And I support that. I see no choice. And it better be a very thorough one. And if you can find the backyard or the neighbor across the oil ditch, get that in there too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lodine. All right, next up, Dr. Warren from the Chamber.
Good evening. I'm going to have a two-parter here. The first part has to do with marijuana, and my concerns are pretty practical. I mean, I agree with most people, and certainly with the mayor when we talk about people who follow the rules and people who don't follow the rules. But what I'm concerned about from our city is that when we make these laws and ordinances and zonings and so forth, that no ordinance is worth anything without enforcement. And the enforcement is what's so dang expensive. And to start this whole thing, we're starting from weakness, it appears to me, because we don't know how many extra police persons we're going to need or how many code enforcement people we're going to need in addition to what we have as of January 1st. And we don't have the money to pay them anyway. So this is a real concern of mine. When I just sat here and listened to some of the things that were ticked off here about you can take care of that. You just make an ordinance and you just create a fee or a tax. So where are the ladies that are going to do the licensing and going to collect the tax and the fee and do all that paperwork that you know is going to be generated by the state of California? And how much room do we have at City Hall just to house these people that are going to have to do this? So this is, as a person that kind of operationalizes stuff like this, that's a concern to me. And I'm sure I'm reiterating your concerns also. I'm thinking, though, that I ought to suggest perhaps that when we are looking at new ordinances that we revisit our homelessness ordinances or those that have to do with transient populations in our city, because that's only going to increase. Because it does, and we know that. That's a fact. So these are the concerns I have, and I'm just reiterating because it makes me feel good to get it off my chest. So that's the first thing. And now we're going to go on to things that are more pleasant. And that is the golf tournament coming up October 14th. And doesn't that sound ridiculous that we would talk about two things like that in the same minute? But the Chamber is actively seeking sponsorships and teams. And if you are even capable of holding a club, we would welcome you to our golf tournament. October 14th, and it will be at Buena Vista Golf Course. On October 28th, we are going to have our gala, which is now going to be a Galloween, and it is going to be very different. It is going to be in our transit center, and I say that with all hope that beats eternal in my chest. So we are going to have costumes and all the things that you associate with a fun Halloween party, and we're also going to be able to experience our new facility. So I invite you to put those two things, the golf tournament on October 14th and the Galloween on October 28th, on your calendar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
Oh, and don't forget tomorrow at Sit and Sip, and thanks for the plug.
Sit and Sip, you bet. Thank you very much. All right, next up, council statements, non-action. I'm going to start with Councilman Bryant.
Thank you, sir. Well, before I get too deep into anything, I definitely would be remiss, and I know other folks will probably touch on this, if I didn't send my condolences to the multiple families that experienced loss over something so avoidable and tragic out here on Taft Highway. So my sympathies are with the families and friends and all the loved ones who were impacted by that. And I hope by some grace of God, that idiot and the idiots who continue to consume alcohol and get behind the wheel, knowingly putting their lives and the lives of others at risk, I hope someone throws the book at them before they get struck down by lightning somewhere. But it's senseless and tasteless. Just drives you crazy to know that those lives are lost over something so stupid. So I wanted to say that. For the past 3 years, I've been able to sit on this dais, and a lot of things we've done, I felt have impacted the city and are very important as far as how the city progresses. And in many ways, the one we talked about tonight, where we go on cannabis, I think is the most important, the most paramount, and during my tenure here. So I don't take that lightly, and I don't think anybody on this council does, anybody in the city hall does. For the folks out there who might watch on TV, the folks out here tonight, it's not something we're here to talk about one time. We're going to make some ordinances that come up, and we're just going to say, okay, this is our decision, deal with it. We want your input. We want your concerns and feelings, and we want those not just tonight, we want them every night leading up to this. So please, 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 give it to us. We can't govern the way you want us to govern if we have to read your minds, because contrary to popular belief, we are not mind readers. My wife seems to think I am, but I'm not. So hopefully she's watching too. But I am very interested, very intrigued. In many ways, almost concerned that we have to consider this, because I would like to think of myself as being more conservative. I wouldn't be one that's, I would say, a huge advocate for pot. But then again, I don't think in some ways it's government's place to input moral standards on the folks to certain extents. So I'm willing to listen. And I think at this point, it's more about managing risk and how we deal with the set of cards we were dealt, as opposed to, we're not dealing from the bottom here. We're not the ones who dictate what hands come up. We've been dealt it. How do we deal with it? Now, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councilman Cryer, you're up.
I think I'm getting that backache.
Oh, need some Tylenol.
Yeah. There's been a lot of talk about, the people out there running around, the vagabonds, the homeless, and the bums and stuff out there in our city. There was an issue last weekend and about, shoes being thrown over the power lines, pieces all over the place. There's all kinds of different things going on that causing problems. The restrooms being destroyed, made it hard for us average citizens to use them or take advantage of the Fifth Street Park and stuff. And we had a little meeting last week, and with the chief of police and our Mayor Pro Tem Hill was there, and the city manager was there, and we had a nice little discussion about things that we can do and stuff. And as long as the public know that things are being done, extra policemen out there are watching things. We have a resource officer from the high school now has got extra work to go out there and watch things, checking for warrants and making things during the daytime to make it more safer for our town, and let the vagrants know that we're watching. And they have the right to be there like anybody else. You can't tell them they can't be there, but if they do something wrong or harassing or breaking or littering, we can do something about it. I just feel that the churches and stuff, going back to the Bible, you give a person a fish, they're going to learn nothing and do anything, but you teach them how to do it. How do you teach them? Get involved in the church. You need to get them to be participants. Help find business. There are things you can and can't do, but do what can churches do. That's their role, to take care of the problem. It's not the city's problem to take care of it, because we have certain things that we can and can't do as by the nature of the laws of our state. But the churches can do more. It's more than just giving them food. All it does is attract them. They're going to get more and more and more. But if you want to go ahead and maybe be productive, work with the families, with like of them are homegrown people here, work with the families and stuff, find out, get more in depth, what can we do with that situation? We have some, well-known characters in our town that, the parents are doing all they can, but they need a little bit of help. But I think the churches should get more involved with it, not just giving them food and that's it. There's more to it than that. And I think also that places that distribute food and stuff, a lot of times they go get the free food, but they go to the park or different areas, they just dump a lot of it, they keep what they want and dump the rest of it on the ground or sell it. There's got to be some way we can police that, or have them get with the need centers or different distribution centers. What can we do to work together to help prevent and work all of it together with the churches and with the city and with downline to help prevent some of this stuff and help control it, so that it keeps our city clean, and hopefully along the way, we can help convert some of those homeless people and stuff. Because a lot of times we're a giving city. We give a lot. We care for our people. We give them that, and the homeless and stuff don't hear anything criticism. You got to shame them a little bit. Then we feel like maybe we need to do better, but we always give them, don't say nothing. That's my view. That's just my personal view on that. And it's a concern that's going to get worse, especially when our laws get lax for the greediness, I think, of the state trying to get more money in for their coffers they can spend on high-speed rails or whatever they want to spend on. Is going to go for the everything but the problem. But I think that it's going to cause a lot of people to lose their jobs. I think a lot of people are going to try it one time. They go to work, and with their luck, I'm a firm believer in Murphy's Law, they'll be the one picked to go and have a drug test or something, and in their bloodstream, whatever drugs you're taking, they lose their job, and then it's hard to be employed again anywhere else. Can't go anywhere. I see some of it. I hear some of it. I see a lot of people. Yeah, I lost my job because I came to work drunk, or it's in my system, or whatever drug they have, not realizing the impact it has on themselves, their family, wives, and children in the future. I see the concern there, but the homeless part of it. Why is it a problem now these days? The last 10 years. Why now? Why not in the past? We have it. Those are questions I ask, and that's some questions I ask in the community. What can we do? And I go back to the churches, because I'm a firm believer of religion and church that can solve things if they want to do it. And that's what I have to say on that.
All right, thank you very much. Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to homeless, I've been volunteering at the Needs Center for quite a while. I always think about all the people that come in. If we were to build a manufacturing plant across the street, how many of these folks would really qualify for employment? And frankly, not many. Many of the folks that come in are on Social Security disability. Most have a place to live. We do have homeless wandering around. But if we're all going to get together, it's eventually going to cost money. The bottom line is to help curtail the homeless situation and try to help these folks to build shelters, to build homes, or whatever we're going to do. It's going to cost money. And where's that money going to come from? And who's going to support that? And so that's probably the biggest issue. We all like to do something, and the Needs Center and the Laborers of Harvest and the different churches and organizations around the food bank in Bakersfield provides food over here too. We do what we can, but it's eventually going to cost money. And so we can get all these people together, but where's that pot of money going to come from? So that's probably the biggest kind of concern. I still have in my mind why homeless people come to Taft. What's the draw here? What brings them here? And certainly, why would you come here this summer? I mean, it's been average of over 105 degrees. I sit home in a nice air-conditioned home. I think about those folks out. Where do you go hide from 105-degree heat? So it's awful. A lot of thievery is going on, and it's not all homeless people. There's a lot of drug users that live in homes. They're out stealing and to support their habits or whatever they're doing. But we wouldn't have thieves if we didn't have buyers. And I think, if we can curtail the buyer, you get a great deal on something brand new out of the box, in the box, and they want a third of the cost of what the sticker price on it is. Where did that come from? And if you're going to turn your eye away from that and buy that item from this person that didn't buy that item, or somebody didn't donate it to him, if we didn't have buyers, we wouldn't have thieves. So I think that's a situation that we really need to look back at. Obviously, looking at this marijuana ordinance, it's an industry. If we get commercial grow, it's going to provide some tax money, revenue for the city, and jobs. And, that's what we're looking for. If you got a better idea of bringing an industry in, come on down. I mean, city manager and our planning director would love to talk to you if you got a better idea of something. So we can't be in a bubble here. This got passed by the voters. Marijuana's out there. It's coming. How is the city of Taft going to handle it? So when we have our first readings, we need some input. If you've got some input now, we would love to hear from you. And one last item. Just as I left the house tonight, I was watching a national TV program, and a guy was on there promoting Cal Exit, meaning the state of California exit from the Union, become its own country. And all they need is 567,000 votes to get an initiative put on the ballot. So think about all the ramifications of the state of California becoming its own country. We can't afford our state as it is. How would it be if we became our own country? So I don't know if any legislators are promoting this or exactly who the backers of this Cal Exit is, but you're going to be hearing about it. And for God's sakes, don't sign a petition on that. The state couldn't afford to be on its own. They promote it as because we're seventh largest economy in the world, but the federal government supports a lot of what's going on in California: roads and infrastructure and water, and parks and recreation, and I don't know, all this stuff. We wouldn't have a remodel of our wastewater treatment plant if we had not gotten a loan from the USDA. So if we were on our own country, where would we have gone for those funds? The state of California couldn't afford it, and so we'd have to do it ourselves. So just think about that. But that's how crazy the state is becoming. So anyway, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, point on or talk about something. I've noticed a lot on Facebook where people are talking about all the petty crimes we've had. And yes, we have a lot. But there are certain responsibilities that we have, too. We need to lock our doors. For some reason, people seem to think that locking their doors is something they shouldn't have to do. You're constantly hearing about people that their cars are being broke into. Well, yeah, sometimes they're actually broke into, but a lot of times we're leaving our car doors open. Those days are over. I mean, I remember being a kid and not having my doors locked. Those days are gone. Yeah, Mayberry's gone. It's not going to be. It's our responsibility to lock our doors and watch our cars and watch what we keep in our cars. If you leave a purse or a computer in your car, somebody wants it. I've heard it stated many times. Why are you posting that you're on vacation? These lovely selfies of you, at the beach. Who's at your house? And who's watching your Facebook? And for God's sake, don't take people you don't know in your house. I was just reading somebody today talking about somebody who they thought they were trying to help who stole them blind. Well, duh. Seriously. And call the police. We have a really good police department in spite of what some people seem to think. And we are fortunate in this small town that when we do call our police, unless they are very busy doing something else, they respond quickly. But they can't help you or help others if they don't know what's going on. And they don't read minds either. So if you have an issue, call the police. Let them know what's going on. Look around you, see what's happening. Be responsible for your surroundings. Don't expect everybody else to fix it for you. That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Just briefly, the Cal Exit. Boy, now there's an interesting concept. California, Cal Exit, its own country. State of California has about 12% of the nation's population currently. State of California also has about 40% of all the welfare recipients in the United States of America. That's a pretty good record to have. The state of California currently carries about $1.5 trillion worth of pension debt alone for our public employees' pensions, and it's growing every day. Now, when we had a real good budget year, we had, what they brag about, $10 billion in surplus. Well, let's see, if you had great years every year at $10 billion a year, somebody do the math for me. How long is it going to take you if you poured every nickel of that into that unfunded liability of $1.5 trillion? One of the things we get from the United States of America is our military. Every country has military because you have to protect your borders and secure the safety of your citizens. Can you imagine California having their own military? Where are they going to get that money? It's comical. Absolutely a comical thought. I cannot imagine it for the life of us. On a much more serious note, this past weekend, the West Side, not the city of Taft, the West Side buried two wonderful young ladies. And we did that because not of the dangerous Taft Highway. I will tell you, I was asked this question by a reporter when I was at the Baptist Church. And the reporter was for Channel 17 News, and she said, based on the terrible tragedy that took place, which is why you all are here today, which is the two Sorensen ladies, And 3 days prior to that, another honest young man who supported a family getting killed by a repeat drunk driver. This lady said, a reporter, based on that, would you say that Taft Highway is getting a reputation as a dangerous highway? Mm-hmm. And I said, absolutely not. To do that is to take the focus away from those who are responsible for these tragedies and atrocities, which are individuals who knowingly, when they're sober, take it upon themselves to either drink or take drugs and become a danger to everybody else on the highway. The Taft Highway is a strip of asphalt. I've driven that strip of asphalt thousands of times since I moved to the city of Taft, and I'm still here. Okay, there's idiots everywhere, but is that a dangerous highway? No, do not give those people that opportunity to point the finger at a strip of asphalt. This is not an infrastructure problem. This is not a problem that's going to go away with capital investment or Caltrans. These are people that disregard morals and ethics and laws, all because of their own selfishness, and they do not care about anybody else. The people who are responsible for those 3 tragic deaths are both alive and well and healthy today. I saw the one guy in a courtroom at the arraignment. He looked as healthier than I am. A little bit scratch on him. Is Taft Highway a dangerous highway? No, it's not a dangerous highway. People, human beings, are the danger out there, folks. Not Taft Highway. Okay, next up. Department reports. We have any department reports? I am going to ask that we get a department report briefly from the Chief of Police. We have discussed this marijuana issue at length. We did not call on the lead professional law enforcement officer within the city of Taft. So I am going to do just that. Without letting him know that I'm going to do it, I'm going to ask him if he would please come up here and comment on what he has seen based on his conversations with other law enforcement professionals when we have more and more cannabis in our neighborhood. So if you would, please, Chief.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council persons. I have some numbers for you, thought you might like. I sat in the back listening to the data given out today, and being a previous narcotics enforcement officer for many, many years, I'm kind of familiar with these numbers, so I put together a few numbers for you guys tonight. Depending on if it's an inside grow or an outside grow, or if they're going to do pure female plants, Sinsemilla, which has a higher THC content, and depending on fertilization, watering, lighting, air conditioning, in-grow, outgrow, however you want to do it. Typically, you're looking at about a pound of usable product from each plant. If you're really on the top of your game, 2 to 2.5 pounds of product for each plant. But here's some of the numbers I thought you guys would find real interesting. At a pound per plant, you're talking about 454 grams. Each one of those grams will make 2 marijuana cigarettes, so times 2, and then times 6 plants. That's 5,448 cigarettes. Divide by 365 days of the year, and you can have 15 of those cigarettes per day.
Every day.
Every hour. And for the remaining 8 hours of the day, you might actually get some sleep, maybe. And that's assuming that the THC content of each of those buds or plants that you grew doesn't go from active to inactive, which they will, even if you put it in an airtight Tupperware container, throw it in your freezer, and hope for the best. 6 plants is more than any one person will ever need. It really, really is. So if your question is whether they're going to go out and sell marijuana, the answer is you're damn right. It's not even a contest in my mind. I'm going to try to refrain myself here because this one is it's kind of touching me. It has been said, and I'm sure everybody here in this audience and on TV has heard this, that alcohol and weed, pretty much weed is no worse than alcohol, and alcohol is legal. I can't believe for a second that our state legislature thinks that adding to the alcohol problem with some more additional products is a good idea. I really am not seeing that as a good thing. I'm actually more scared for our kids, the example that we're setting for them. Kathy, you still here? No, she's gone. Kathy and I used to sit on the Student Attendance Review Board back when I was a sergeant and a lieutenant. We used to see a lot of kids who were truant, wouldn't come to school altogether, doing failing work when they were at school. Most of them had issues because of marijuana. Most of them, they would come to the SAR board and I would see it in their eyes and I would ask them, "You've been using weed?" And the answer would be yes. They'd stay up late at night, they're not getting the proper amount of sleep, they don't want to get up in the morning. It was an issue. I'd see this a lot. In my judgment, anything that impedes your judgment, your reaction levels, your reflexes is not something you need to be driving a motor vehicle with, literally. But we didn't do this. The state of California did. And I think that we are on the right course for impacting this the best that we can. And I think that whatever it is that we do will benefit us in the future so it doesn't get completely out of control. And that's my thoughts.
I thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate your time. And like I say, everybody, I didn't tell them I was going to do this. So thanks for coming up and giving us your feedback. Appreciate your opinion in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. City manager statements. City Manager Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no statements.
All right. City Attorney statements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No statement.
All right. Future agenda requests. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening, do we have any future agenda requests?
I have no.
All right. And then we'll move forward.
I do have, if I can back up for a minute.
Well, we can back right up to item number 7.
We did notice a meeting on the PACE program for next meeting, so we're encouraging folks to either give us a written testimony on how they feel about the program or come down and show up during that next meeting.
On either side of the PACE issue. So whether you had a positive experience with it and you support it, you had a negative experience with it and you're critical of it, either side of the PACE issue, thank you very much.
It's a public hearing, so it was duly noticed. That's why it wasn't on the agenda tonight, because it required a 15-day noticing, right?
All right.
10.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next up, consent calendar items 9 through 18. All items listed on the consent calendar shall be considered routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the City Council requests specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Any item removed from the consent calendar will be considered after the regular business items. Are there any items on the consent calendar that any member of the public would like to comment on? No? All right. Are there any items on the consent calendar that any council member would like removed from the consent calendar? None? All right. In that case, consent calendar consists of item number 9, which is the minutes from the July 18th regular meeting. Payment of bills, about $480,000 worth. The Treasurer's Report. A recommendation is a motion to receive and file the Treasurer's Report dated July the 10th, 2017 for the month of May 2017. Item 12, the Zoning Ordinance Amendment number 2016-23, Home Occupation Permits. Recommendation is a motion to approve and amend the City of Taft Municipal Code entitled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Taft approving Zoning Ordinance Amendment number 2016-23, an amendment of Section 6-12-18 of Title VI of the Taft Municipal Code regarding home occupation permits. Item 13 is the Zoning Ordinance Amendment number 2017-11, Accessory Dwelling Units. Recommendation is a motion to approve and amend the City of Taft Municipal Code entitled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Taft approving Zoning Ordinance Amendment number 2017-11, an amendment of various sections of Title VI of the Taft Municipal Code, amending definitions, references, and regulations for accessory dwelling units. Item 14, Acting Police Captain. The recommendation is a motion to approve the position of Acting Police Captain at salary range 63.3, which is $3,685.59 biweekly, and approve the job description. And a motion to adopt a resolution entitled A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft a resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft approving the position of acting police captain and establishing corresponding compensation rates. Approval, or item number 15 is approval of memorandum of agreements and employee compensation plans. The recommendation is a motion to adopt a resolution entitled A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft approving the memorandum of agreement between the City of Taft and the Taft Correctional Supervisors Association / Communications Workers of America, AFL-CIO Local 9110. Item 16, authorize signers for escrow documents pertinent to 619 Woodrow Street. Recommendation is a motion to adopt a resolution entitled Resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft authorizing the mayor, city manager, and/or assistant city manager to execute all escrow and other documents necessary to complete the sale of real property located at 619 Woodrow Street in Taft, California, and make certain findings in connection therewith. Item 17 is agreement with HDL for sales, use, and transactions tax audit and information services. And finally, item 18, an agreement with GovInvest, Inc., excuse me, for the use of the standard pension module of the total liability calculator, a tool that we use at City Council to track the total liability / unfunded liability that we have in PERS. So, at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items 9 through 18.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Cryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hill,
Yes.
and Mayor Knorr.
Yes, that passes on a 5-0 vote. Thank you. At this time, this council will go into closed session for item A, conference with labor negotiator Craig Jones, city manager, government code 54957.6, all units. And item B, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, government code section 54956.9B, 2 potential cases. I want to thank you all again for being here and for being interested in participating in your government.